Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience here at NextGen Planners. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Lisa Conway-Hughes from Westminster Wealth. How are you doing this morning, Lisa?
Very good, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. It really, really is, because I've certainly been following you and your kind of core Instagram author for a while on Instagram. So now it makes sense to get you on, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But it's lovely to have you on the show, especially because it's Monday morning. So it's nice to have a good conversations on them, get us ready for the week. So for anyone who doesn't know Lisa, she is a financial planner, author, and speaker from Westminster Wealth. We always do this, Lisa, but just to kind of give us a bit of context behind what you get up to every day. Can you tell us what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think that's what I love about my job, because it's always different. It's always changing. So often it's the day job, so doing all my annual reviews, the tax planning that needs to be done at this kind of this time of year, but then also lots of speaking. I do lots of lunches and learns for big corporates, my Instagram, podcast, those kind of things, which I think add a bit of creativity to my day.
Yeah, I mean, literally almost every single person that I've asked that question on this show has always said that they love they don't no 2 days are the same, and every day looks different to them, and that's one of the best things about being a financial planner, isn't it? And
Yeah.
for anyone who's listening to this and is thinking, maybe I want to be a financial planner one day, or something like that, that is definitely one of the benefits of it, is that it is a very, very varied role. Like, you don't do two things the same days.
When I joined the industry in my early 20s, I joined it because I wanted a job. I didn't really
Yeah.
know what financial planning was all about. And that's the bit that really stuck with me, actually. It's not a job about numbers and spreadsheets on the whole. It's actually about the people.
Yeah, I think actually at all, really. I think that's what you learn a little bit further down. It's not even just numbers on the whole. It is numbers. There's no hardly any numbers involved at all. More of the time, it is actually people management and understanding people and what they want to do with their lives, which is brilliant. So, apart from that, obviously, since you've joined the profession, that mindset has clearly changed from thinking that it was just going to be about money and that kind of stuff. But in terms of the profession itself, like, since you joined when in your early 20s, what has changed? How has the profession moved on from then, do you think? How have you seen it move?
Well, so I joined the industry in the early 2000s, and sort of straight from uni, and I think it's changed a lot. In number one, we've become a lot more professional, which is definitely a good thing. I think you can also be normal and be yourself. Like when I first joined, we almost taught to try and be sort of cookie cutter versions of each other, like pinstripe suits. I had to have my cufflinks, a posh pen, and it just felt really inauthentic to me. It didn't feel that was me. And so I think what's brilliant now as IFAs, we can express ourselves and, well, who we are, really.
Hmm. No, it's a good point. I think as well, like, we did a poll. I mean, even just focusing on dress code, for instance, when I was working at a financial planning firm, we used to do meetings in flip-flops and shorts. And even when it comes down to things as simple as that, it sounds ridiculous, but it does just show actually how it's moved on, because you think that those kind of remnants of the past are still going to be there, but actually in most cases people just want to have a good conversation about their lives, and they don't really care I mean, I think you'll probably agree, there are some clients that you will work with you'll probably have a little bit more kind of professionalism and traditional professionalism, shall we say, with than others. But I agree with you that the profession has moved on from that kind of awful stuffy nature. Do you think it's still there, though? Do you think that's still in the corners of our profession?
I do, because I think, well, if you think 20 years ago, there's still people in the industry that were ingraining that outlook into us, that are still in the profession now. And we know that it's an aging workforce, our industry. So I think, yeah, I think there will always be there. And I think also it's a defense mechanism as well, that sort of superiority that can still exist in our industry.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that we are more professional now. We put a poll out last week on our social media asking if people think that the general public think we are a profession, as in financial planners. What do you think? Like, do you think we're at that stage yet?
I hope so. I do think it depends on the individual, doesn't it? Like, I think most people don't really know about our industry and don't take financial advice and think it's probably something that other people do or wealthier people do. So yeah, I hope people now see as a proper profession there to help people and provide solutions rather than sell them a product, which is what we were really there in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I think that's a crucial part of it. Actually, is that mentality of being sold to. You can't have a profession where you feel like you're being sold to all the time.
Yeah.
So, I think we're actually at that kind of crucial tipping point now, where we've almost got almost again. There's no figures or research to back this up, but it feels like there's almost a tipping point between, half and half between the still remnants of that sales stuff, definitely. But then there's still people like you, for instance, who are doing amazing work and actually are turning it into a profession as well. So, I mean, goodness knows where we'll be in 5-10 years time, because that'll be, really, really good to watch.
Yeah, exciting.
And if you could think back to when you were starting in your early 20s, in the early 2000s, I'm just interested to, like, what things you got wrong or what lessons you learned that people in our audience now, if they are thinking of becoming a financial planner, or they're still on their journey towards becoming a financial planner. What kind of tips would you give them to really get off to a flying start that you wish you knew back then? And I'm saying back then because, I mean, it's not that long ago, really, but, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Feels it.
yeah.
I think I think you've got to choose where you do your training well. So the first company that I worked for wouldn't necessarily, with hindsight, have been the company that I wish had been my first company. I think you want to really pick a company that's going to take you under their wing and really teach you the good stuff of our industry. I was really just left out in the cold as a cold caller to bring in leads for the IFAs, and I'm glad I did it. I learned lots, but I definitely think my time could have been put to better use.
Yeah. So does that mean the exams as well as the kind of training that you get,
Yeah, I
or?
think I think it's about what are the core values of that business and are you aligned with them? Because for me, there was definitely a mismatch in the beginning. And as I said, it wasn't necessarily a career choice for me. It was just I needed a job and one came along. And so I don't think I really reflected on what would be the best first career choice. So I think you've got to find a company that you align yourself with, that you can feel authentic. I always felt that that first company was always trying to change me. They didn't like my northern accent or my northern mannerisms. They definitely thought that I needed to be a bit more posh.
Wow.
And eventually, I think I turned those things into a positive thing, where I felt that I could be authentic with starting my Miss Lolly blog, and very quickly the press reacted very, very positively to it. So it does show that there was a need at that time to break away from that mold, and to be pink and feminine and real to myself. So I think you've got to find the right company to be with. Don't hesitate on the exams. If you fail one, just get stuck in and rebook it straight away. Don't let them really hang over you. I always did the ROs and the AFs at the same time, so that really helped me get them done quickly. And then I think just being really organized and putting time in your diary to make sure you're building your network early, because although while you're training, you're not going to be advising clients, but if you're going to, I don't know, local networking events and just getting to know people, it's going to take them months, if not years, before they feel comfortable to trust you to refer. So you may as well start that process and start building those connections as early as possible, I would say.
Yeah, they're really good tips. On the last one as well, I think, that's one of the things that you get told when you're a financial planner at the start, is to just go out there and talk to people. And that's one of the most, I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, it's a great piece of advice in practice, but it's a terrible thing to say to somebody because I've been told that before, and I'm like, where do I go? Like, where is this amazing world where I can just go out there and talk to loads of people? It's actually a lot more complex than that. You don't just go out there because you normally don't get any training on how to go to networking events and how to actually talk to people about what you do. Mainly you go to networking events, just try and find someone that you know, and just so that you can be comfortable eating your bacon roll or whatever it is. There are a lot more different ways now to go out there and actually get out there into the world, and I'm putting that into inverted commas because there are a lot more
You've
different
got
ways.
to choose the right networking event. So again, I never fitted. It didn't feel right to me doing some of the more traditional breakfast networking events. So I found an amazing group of women who supported me right from the very beginning, called Sister Snog, and that felt me. So I found my corner of the networking world that suited me, and then it was about going to the same events regularly and meeting the same people and just making genuine friendships rather than, can I shove a business card down your throat?
That is so true because you just have a drawer full of business cards that you never even look at anyways. I mean, yeah, I think it's about being purposeful as well, and like you said, going to them with the mentality of making friends rather than just purely just getting business cards from people. But also what you said was, you said it's kind of on the same lines as take your time a little bit. When you mentioned like everyone's got their own journey, and I think that's so true. When you're starting off as a financial planner, especially if you've got peers who are going through it at different paces to you, it can feel like, I mean, it's just human nature to compare yourselves to other people. But you got to remember that everyone is on a different journey towards what they want to do. Some people get to a point where they think, okay, well, this isn't for me anymore, so I'm going to change now. And I think that's absolutely fine. And I definitely got that from your answer, is to kind of just take your time and go whichever way you want to do. Obviously, you'd be ambitious and obviously, really push yourself and strive to be better. But I think take your time with where you want to get to.
Yeah, and also don't waste your time with things that don't feel right, because they won't work anyway. Like those breakfasts that used to make me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can't actually. Sorry, I just can't. When you, I mean, I'm not gonna dig any further into that what you mentioned about the being too northern or something like that. I would love to dig into it, but I think that's probably a conversation for a different day. But I mean, I personally have never heard anything like that before. I mean, doubtful of. I mean, undoubtedly, people in the audience will have heard those stories before. So it just shows as well, like it depends on the kind of different cohorts of people that you keep yourself in, of how your experience of this profession or industry or whatever you want to call it is going to be. For instance, people in our NextGen community, they will, they're always surrounded by good people doing amazing things, so they hear less of the stories about those people who are doing, shall we say, less good things or still traditional things, if you know what I mean.
And don't forget, that was 20 years ago, and I think that was a time when people did want you to be cookie cutter versions of each other. We had to say the same things in the same way in the same meetings, and that it just didn't fit right. And I'm glad that I didn't conform at the time.
Yeah,
It didn't
absolutely.
go down well at the time.
I can imagine, and yeah, I think it's like it's good that you didn't conform, but there are certainly people, for instance, who will really be affected by that. So it's good that we don't hear many examples of that. There will be things like that happening still today, but it's good that we don't hear that many of them. Absolutely. I ask this question quite a lot, especially when I'm talking to people who are actual, day-to-day financial planners. Can you just give us a summary of the people that you work with and what they kind of, I don't want to say similar traits, but what they're kind of going through in their heads? What are they really struggling with that you actually help them with? Because it's always a fascinating question to ask this.
I think there's probably two real key categories of clients that I have. The first one are really young guns who are earning really well, and they know that they want to use the money that they're making to get ahead financially. So they're doing all that hard work early. And for them, a lot of it is education, because we don't receive this education at school. So it's me helping them understand the tax side of planning, how investments actually work, what things they can be using. And well, I find that a very exciting niche of my clients, because yeah, almost their ambition is contagious. And then the next group are probably, I suppose, attracting people like me in their 40s who maybe they've got good jobs, maybe they've done bits of financial planning along the way, but they don't necessarily have a plan. They don't know, what have I got to do every year to achieve my goals? Or maybe they don't even know what those goals are yet. So I would say those would be my two key areas of clients.
And you mentioned a few of their challenges there when you say, I don't know where when it gets deeper than that, though, like what are they really, what do they wake up? This is one of those questions that terrible business coaches ask people, but what are the 3 a.m. moments? What do they wake up thinking? Oh, like what? Because I mean, I think it is true, isn't it, that people don't get up on a daily basis and think, oh, I'm going to go and see a financial planner today. It's something deeper than that. Like what is, and do you kind of get any feeling from them on what that deeper thing is?
Some of them are really, really open, and it's with me from the very beginning, and we don't want, especially if they grew up in an environment where money was quite a stressful thing at home. I think they don't want to feel that stress about money and that worry of, am I on track? Because actually, who has the skills on the whole in the UK to know, am I on track financially? And I think that's what you want to know. And whether that's in comparison to your peers or in comparison to your goals, I think that will keep people awake at night. But also, am I just missing a trick? Like, what could I be doing better? And usually a few hints and tips are all most people need. Like when I look at the questions that I get on my Instagram, it's always about, yeah, can my money be working harder? So that hopefully one day I don't have to keep working this hard.
Yeah. That is like the ultimate personal finance question that you've just had. I mean, we could have a book called "Can My Money Work Harder?" so that I don't have to keep. That'll be an amazing book, because that's the question that everyone wants to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's true. And obviously there'll be a little kind of like other transitional events that are going, and like, for instance, if someone's changing their job, that brings a lot of kind of uncertainty, and they reach out for financial professionals at that point as well. But it's always fascinating to hear the kind of different things that different clients are going through. It really, really is. And that's like a different transition, of course, to the people who are working with retirees only, because they're going through a completely different thing, a lot more emotions, actually, I find.
Yeah, I think
because it's a huge
switching your mentality from someone who's always saved and invested to feel comfortable about spending is a real big emotional shift. And some of them really, really struggle with that actually now is the time they've got to enjoy that money.
Yeah. I was talking about this to my friends actually the other day, and when I used to work at financial planning business, we used to have clients with millions, and they were terrified because they used to look at their. I mean, we told them not to, of course, as you do, but they're going to, and we told them not to look at their pension or investments or whatever it was every day. And they were looking at it, and it was going up by like it was a really volatile period. So it was going, some days it was going up by like £40,000, and some days it was going down by like £30,000. And that, when you think about it, that's them looking effectively at their own bank account, really. I know it's not, but it's like us looking at our own current account and just seeing it going up 40,000 one day and down 30,000 the next day. I can't imagine what that must feel like for people.
Yeah, it must be a roller coaster. But I think you're right. The biggest tip is don't look if it's going to worry you. And that's probably why sometimes the way we've moved on, where clients will have an app on their phone, it encourages them almost to look more often rather than waiting for the quarterly report to come in. So it can be a roller coaster.
It's a good conversation, that, actually, on the kind of app valuation side of things, like whether it's actually a good thing to give clients access to be able to see how much they've got in their investments all the time, because it's actually that leads to bad behaviors, because you get panicky and you worry all the time. So no, it's true. You mentioned Instagram there. this is actually, of course, where the context of this conversation comes from, because that's where we've followed you for a while now. So you have a strong social media presence under, you mentioned it before, Miss Lolly.
Yeah.
And that's on Instagram. And you have a collab with somebody from, I think Molly's from Australia. She spends some of the time in Australia, some of the time in the UK, doesn't she?
Yes.
Molly Benjamin. And that's called, the collaboration is called the Ladies Finance Club, which sounds amazing as well. But what I mean, people go and check them out afterwards, or go and have a look now if you're on your phone, because they really are, got plenty of followers, amazing content. But how important personally have these been for you for increasing your audience, increasing your confidence, and increasing your kind of just presence out there? And also a secondary part to that question would be, what tips for the people in the audience now, what tips would you give them on also raising their presence and they're building their audience as well?
Yeah, so I think there's so many bits to that question. So what's it been like for my confidence? And I think it really has been really good for my confidence, because I started it in my late 20s, and that was at a time when I wasn't sure how to actually feel like me in my industry. And so it just started as an anonymous blog, that, as I said earlier, it got picked up very quickly by the FT, and they did a really nice article on it, and then the Daily Mail, and it just really went from there. And it made me realize, actually, I can be me. I can be, I can give out that impression. It can still be my version of professional. It just doesn't have to be what I thought the industry was. Almost, what would the word be? A bit put offish. Like, I think we weren't trying to hug our clients with that first impression. It was almost to try to be more superior. Superior is probably the right word. So it really helped my confidence to know that people did want to hear about money in the way that I wanted to talk about it. And then from how it's helped me from a business point of view is, it almost generates too many leads. I have to be really careful about not promising myself to too many people. So even just last weekend, I did a post on mortgages, and people sent in me their email address and got more than 30 people wanting mortgage advice. And so fortunately, there's a team at Westminster that can deal with that amount of mortgage leads. But yeah, sometimes I just have to be careful, and I've had to actually put things in place at the beginning so that I can only accept 8 new leads a month of new client meetings, because otherwise it just gets too much and I'll be spreading myself too thinly. So sometimes, I had to be careful, let's put it that way, not to accept too much. But also it's just fun. I do just think I've learned so much. That Molly used to work in events, and I've learned so much from her about how to run an event, whether it's online or in person. I've learned about Canva. I've learned about things that don't naturally come right to me. So marketing, making things look good. I love doing it, which is why I still keep doing it, because I do think it brings that element of learning that it's not natural to me.
Yeah, there's so many things in there, but maybe just before we move on to those things, can you just tell us some tips maybe? I mean, kind of a few things carefully came out there. For instance, like one tip would obviously be do something that you love, because then it keeps you going, and you're not going to stop doing it. But like, what other things would you tell our audience on how to do it, how to get started?
So I think you've got to, if you're going to get involved in social media, you've got to do it. You've got to do it continuously, and you can't just consistently. That's the right word. You can't just be stop and start, but also you've got to do it well, because we see so much on the internet, especially in the unregulated space, where people are putting actually dangerous content out there. And so often I feel like I'm fighting that. You've got to do it well. You've got to obviously be compliant. We've got to represent our industry well. But I do think it's very empowering, because it's getting a message out there in a way that people actually want to receive it. How many people actually do want to sit down with the Financial Times on the weekend? They want to be fed it in a different way, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true, and you've absolutely cracked it there, because I always say, like, to people that you don't need to compete with Google. Like this information that you're putting out there, Molly, sorry, Lisa, is I can't get you too confused on that. Is is that Google has all the information that you're telling your audience, but what the difference is, what you're doing is you're giving them it in Lisa's style. You're giving them it in your way that you talk to people.
Yeah.
And when they resonate with you as a person, they therefore listen to the information that you're telling them much more, and that increases the trust that they have in you, because then, I mean, like you said about, you know, people getting in touch with you asking if you could do them their mortgage. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And it's also, I think, what I've found as well is asking them questions. So, and getting them involved with the conversation. Like I know you do polls quite often, don't you? Asking people what their thoughts are, or how they deal with these situations, or you know how they come across these financial issues and stuff like that. And when you do that, that includes them in the conversation, rather than it just being a one-way monologue of you telling them what you know. It's them getting involved with a community of people who also have the same things as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it's about changing our industry to suit the consumer, rather than what I feel, especially in the beginning, we were trying to get the consumer to change to suit what we were offering, and that just doesn't work. How many
No.
people actually want to read a pension brochure still, like, or a protection brochure? I think we've still got a lot to learn.
You would definitely do. Oh God, don't start me off on that conversation, because we could get into the area of documents for a whole other podcast, but let's not do that today. But like on this kind of theme of personal finance content that you put out there into the world, you also released a book called Money Lessons,
Yeah.
and that focuses on personal finance. And it's I've read some of the reviews when I was doing research into these questions, for instance, and a buzzword that continuously came out was just simple. And I think that's so nice to hear. Is like simplicity is beautiful when it comes to this stuff, because complexity is a sign of bad design, not good design. So how have you used that to grow your audience as well? And again, like if anyone in the audience has got any, or is thinking about writing a book, what tips would you give them on writing their own book as well?
So I think the book is really just another piece, another way for me to speak to people, and I wrote it in mind that not everyone's going to want a financial advisor, or at least they're not going to want one in their 20s. So I wrote that book with a tone of voice of what I wish I'd known when I first started, sort of when I was at uni, when I just graduated, what I'd known about money. If I hadn't been in this industry, what would I want to know? And I think also I did French for my degree. I didn't come into this sort of having done maths or economics, or it was all a bit of a foreign language. So I think it's just the way that I learned it, and then it went in my head, was the way then it comes out. So maybe I like simple finances as well. And then I can't remember the rest of the question now. Oh, how have I used it to for me? How would you write a book? I think I did it in a very, very extreme way, but that's just me. I'm always like that. Like I had 6 weeks to write 60,000 words, and do the day job. And so I had to get up really. So what I would do is on the weekend, I would plan what I was going to write that week. And then I had to write 1,000 words a day, Monday to Friday, and then 2,500 each day on the weekend. And when I just broke it down like that, and then it got sent back to the editors, who very kindly scrubbed half of it out and said, right, you've got another 6 weeks to do another 30,000. And so for me, I really, as much as I hated it at the time, it needed to be done quickly, otherwise I'd have lost interest. So just getting it done and getting it written, and it wasn't about making it perfect straight away. It was about just getting it down, getting something on paper, and then amending that, rather than agonizing over every sentence and every word.
Yeah, no, it's good. The difference, of course, with what how your book was published was that you went with, I mean, well, a publisher actually, I think they approached you, didn't they, asking you to write this book?
Yeah, on Instagram, strangely.
There you go, another big tick for Instagram audiences. But like the difference is, of course, that they kind of you had that deadline from them, whereas a lot of people, when they're thinking of writing a book, they kind of write the book first, or they at least have an idea of what it's going to say, and then they either go to a publisher or self-publish. So it's a bit different in your case, but I think the lessons that you've learned there is definitely true. Is to kind of just, you have to be so rigid with yourself, almost terrorize yourself, because you've got to get these ideas out of your head onto paper one way or another, or
Exactly.
onto a
And also,
screen.
it doesn't just have to be, it doesn't just have to be you. You can have someone helping with the brainstorming. You can be writing it. Well, you can say it and someone can type it up for you. I think you've just got to find your way of doing it where you can get it done quickly so that you don't lose interest.
Yeah. I
How
wonder
many
if chat.
books are there out there?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was actually going to say, like, I wonder how many people have actually started this project and haven't actually got to a point where they want to continue it anymore. I bet there's thousands. I'm just thinking from from how you use a perspective as well. I know that most people who we talk to who write books, they always say, "Well, I don't make any money from it. It's just simply just a marketing tool." Is that the same story for you? Like, do you just see it as a kind of bit of authenticity?
Yeah, it would never make me
Yeah.
rich, but also I took the challenge on really from a point of view again of just learning that I'd never written a book before, and I was really excited to be asked to do it. But again, I learned loads. I learned loads about my tone of voice. I learned loads about just what was my style of writing, because when I look back on my original Miss Lolly blogs, they're so cringy.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point. You've got to start, and you've got, if you don't keep doing it, you won't learn and you won't develop that natural tone of voice.
No. That's probably a good thing that you're looking back and thinking they're cringy, actually, because that means you've got a lot better, which is good.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, yeah, hopefully, I would say, yeah, hopefully. But it's also nice, I guess, just to, like, for that day when your book is actually published and you can show your friends and family and say, I've written a book. And even just to, when I was introducing you at the start of the show, we called you an author and all. I mean, because you are an author, but it must just be nice to have that kind of additional thing in your repertoire. Yeah, you had a good party, I can imagine.
Yeah. Sort of 3 months of pent-up stress enjoyed in that party.
Absolutely. I bet some money lessons were learned that night as well. I would guarantee. I mentioned before about, like, kind of one of the common reviews of your book, sorry, is that it was simple. And one of the other things I really picked up is, and from talking to you today as well, and just from knowing what you do, is one of your really successful things that you have in your arsenal is that you're straight talking and you get to the point really quickly. Like that, I think sometimes, I mean, listen to me waffling on now. That this is the thing, that we always have to kind of buffer our stuff. But how important do you actually think it is nowadays to be straight talking, to get to the point? Because we are living in a much louder world. Do you think that kind of how important do you think it actually is to kind of just be simple and straight to the point and just straight talking?
I think it's really important because we have such low capacity to concentrate now compared to what maybe we used to. So if you can just get a message across really quickly, in a way that someone understands and they're going to remember it, it's going to be much more powerful than writing an essay with lots of fancy words in it. And I always think it's a nice full circle. Like when I was saying earlier that I felt, I was criticised for the way that I spoke, and just not being posh enough. Actually, I think being blunt and direct are very good qualities that you would probably attribute to a northerner anyway. So I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, that was the danger of getting two northerners on the same podcast, that we would just say 5 words to each other and then just be like, well, that's it, it's done. Right, that's it, we can move on now. Yeah. No, I think with clients especially, it does work really well. When we used to use it with clients, at first it made them feel a little uncomfortable because they're like, is this person attacking me? But then they realize that you're doing it on purpose. You're doing it to say to them, basically, you need to do something. I'm not going to give you all the wishy-washy stuff. I'm just going to tell you how it is, and they really value it because they know that you've got their best interests at heart. So it works very well with clients as well. Final couple of questions now, Lisa, that we ask everyone.
Yeah.
So if you think back to 20 years ago when you first came into the profession, it did look a bit, well, substantially different to how it looks now. I mean, that's pre-RDR, that's pre-A-Day, that's pre the two financial crises.
Right, you're
And
making me feel really old.
but you know what I mean, like with that it's changed a lot
Yeah.
since then. But I'm actually interested in the next 10 years of where we're going to get to, because the profession is changing every day. Like, what are you most excited to see? Like, what are you hoping for and wanting to see so much in the next 10 years that you think might happen or could happen?
Well, I would love, I think, for there to be more education in schools, so that we do feel that we can talk about money and we don't feel that it's an alien, almost rude subject to talk about. And like, I've been into my kids' schools and spoken about money to junior school kids, and they really get it. They can learn a lot. I talked to them about tax bands. We talked about compound interest, compound growth, and yeah, they get it. So they've got the capacity to learn it from a young age. So I hope that keeps going. But also, I think the more that parents feel confident about money, they're going to talk to their kids about money, and we can just stop being so British about it. So I hope that keeps going. We keep making progress in that way. What I'd really love is that people actually see this as a wonderful career to join, because if I think about it, I couldn't have asked for a more flexible and more rewarding career, especially when I've had my kids, than this industry. And I don't think it's necessarily sold in that way to people at university or coming out of school at 18. But I think it's a wonderful profession, because you really can make it into whatever it is that you want it to be, whether you're going to have your small little lifestyle business or you're going to grow a massive corporate. I think that's what's so interesting. It can be whatever you want it to be, and so I would hope that people started to see it as a credible thing to start their careers, and fun, and you can learn a lot. And then I think maybe, hopefully, it's not a step too far, but we can still keep pushing to stop. I don't know how to describe this, but not be so. To speak to our customers in the way that they want to be spoken to, rather than being all jargony and corporate and posh. I think that needs to keep moving.
Yeah. Just on that last point, I was actually talking about this to someone the other day, and it really frustrates me that we write. Let's just say, for instance, I'm working a lot on financial plans at the moment. Like, I'm actually building people financial plan templates they can use with their clients. And the way we do that is we start with the client first rather than regulation first. So, which is the way it should be done. You know, you should start with the idea of how can we make this easier to understand for the clients? How can we demonstrate our value easier to them, rather than how can we make this compliant first and then we'll make it look nice, or then we'll make it, you know, readable for the client. It's the wrong way around.
Yeah.
You should start with the client first and then finish with the regulation. But for some reason, we just don't do that.
No.
And also, when you talk, I love the 2 points. I think actually your first 2 points are actually kind of interlinked. So, you know, getting people more interested in personal finance and finance in general is definitely one thing, but also that will help, I think, to get more people into our profession and them see that as a viable career choice. If they change their relationships with money, then that's definitely going to have an impact on them actually entering our profession to work in money, because they'll have a different opinion of it. If someone hates money, and if someone's had a really bad relationship with money, they're less likely to want to go into a profession that is just surrounded by money all the time, because it's going to have negative connotations all the time. I'm not saying that people who have negative relationships with money can't get into financial planning, but I would imagine that you're less likely to, certainly. So I think both of them things are interlinked, definitely.
Yeah. And I think also when I was a kid, my mum and dad would row a lot about money. And I think it was always in my mind.
Yeah.
I was always really didn't stop thinking about money. Like, I always knew how many to the pound, how to the pound, how overdrawn I was.
Yeah.
Like, I was really on the numbers, and because I didn't want to ever feel stressed about money. And I think that's what keeps driving me now, actually, as I want to help people to have the procedures in place so that it's easier to be good with your money than it is to be bad.
That's a good little soundbite that we've got from the podcast there, isn't it? That's good. I'll have to remember that one.
I have to remember that one.
It's funny as well because you mentioned before that you did. I mean, we're talking about university here. You did French. I did English at university. So I mean, again, just proves literally you just do not need. I mean, it's a good job you don't need a financial planning degree to get into financial planning because I think there's only 3 of them available in the UK at the moment. So it's not great. So yeah, it's definitely not a career that people see from early on. It's definitely not. So. Final question is we always like to ask our guests for a book that has helped them in their career so far. So I'm assuming number 1 is going to be Money Lessons by Lisa Conway-Hughes. And then have you got any, what others would you recommend?
The one that I loved this summer was called Content Inc. And it was which John Paluzzi, I think maybe is the author, but I'm still working through all the ideas that book gave me my summer reading last year. So yeah, I think that was a really thought-provoking book for me.
Content Inc. I've actually never. Is that INC? Is it like Content Incorporated?
Yeah, cool. Exactly.
I've never heard about that book, and I'm obsessed with content, so I should definitely go and read that one. 100%. Great stuff. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. We do like to give our guests the last word to say a big thank you for coming on the podcast. So can you tell our audience where to find you, plug your book, of course, and tell us how we can connect with you afterwards as well?
I think the easiest way is just on my Instagram, which is Miss Lolly Money.
There we go. I was expecting it to be a lot longer than that. That's perfect. What were we saying before about straight talking and getting to the point? There we go. Bang on. There you go. Yeah, I would definitely recommend to go and follow Lisa on Instagram because it's really, really good. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. So that was there we go. I'm going to remove you from the screen. It was Lisa Conway-Hughes from Westminster Wealth on the NextGen Planners podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can listen to it, of course, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and on our website. But we also are on social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok as well. Yeah, TikTok as well. And of course, you can listen to it on our website, which is nextgenplanners.co.uk. And on there, you'll find more information about our amazing community of financial service heroes, all the different things that we do here at NextGen to help people be better financial planners. And our conference, which is coming up in May and June this year. It's going to be an amazing 3-part event, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So don't miss that. And of course, I would just say if you could leave us a review, that would be really, really useful. Just helps us to grow the podcast and to let us know how we're doing as well. But for now, thank you so much to Lisa for coming on the show today. Thank you guys for listening as always, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.